On the evening of May 28, 2014, an emergency call was placed to the Tarpon Springs Police Department in Florida. Rebecca Schwartz reported that when she returned home, she discovered that the couple's mansion had been ransacked and numerous valuable belongings had been stolen. But when detectives entered the sprawling 740-square-meter mansion, they uncovered a scene far more horrifying than a burglary. At the foot of the staircase, Dr. Stephen Schwartz lay motionless in a pool of blood. At first, all the evidence pointed to what appeared to be a robbery that had turned into murder. But, as the investigation unfolded, detectives began to realize that the crime scene seemed to have been carefully staged. And that was only the beginning of a story filled with secrets, deception, and ambition. Dr. Stephen Schwartz, 74, was a renowned nephrologist with an estimated fortune of $30 million. The autopsy revealed that he had been strangled, shot twice, once in the head and once in the neck, and suffered a stab wound to the neck. His spine was also fractured, most likely from falling down the staircase after the attack. As investigators searched the house, they found watch boxes scattered across the bedroom floor, with drawers pulled open and their contents strewn about. Rebecca told police that cash, jewelry, and several of her husband's expensive watches were missing. However, details at the crime scene soon led investigators to suspect that this was no ordinary burglary. Although the drawers had been pulled open, there were very few signs that they had been thoroughly searched. The jewelry boxes looked as though they had been deliberately tossed onto the floor to create the appearance of a burglary. More suspiciously, the digital video recorder for the home's security camera system was missing, even though it had been stored in a cabinet above the garage, a location that would have been difficult for an outsider to know about. As if that weren't enough, the family's two large dogs had reportedly been locked inside the very bedroom that was supposedly burglarized throughout the day, according to Rebecca. To Detective John Diebel, these details pointed to one conclusion. The killer was someone who knew the house well, including the location of the security system and the Schwartz family's daily routines. Stephen and Rebecca had married 4 years earlier, after dating for several years. Both had been married before, and each had children from previous relationships. The first person police questioned was Rebecca. However, she appeared to have a solid alibi. Rebecca told investigators that she left the house at around 8:30 a.m. At that time, Stephen was still in bed, reading the newspaper. The two did not see each other again until she returned home that evening and discovered that he was dead. For nearly a year, the investigation reached a dead end. Then, DNA analysis provided the first major breakthrough. 2 DNA samples recovered from Stephen's clothing matched Anton Leo Stragaj, 48, an undocumented Albanian immigrant who had worked for years maintaining and renovating properties owned by the Schwartz family. At the time of the murder, Anton claimed he had been working at another property, and investigators had initially verified his alibi. However, after the DNA evidence emerged, police arrested him in April 2015 on a charge of first-degree murder. At first, Anton denied any involvement and insisted that he had been framed. But after about 90 minutes of questioning, he suddenly changed his story, revealing an account that stunned investigators. Anton claimed that on the morning of the murder, Rebecca had asked him to stop by the mansion to pick up a handbag. When he entered the house, he found Stephen lying in a pool of blood. He said he rushed over, grabbed him by the shoulders, and shook him to see if he was still alive. According to Anton, that was how his DNA ended up on the victim's clothing. Anton said he took the bag as Rebecca had requested and then left the house. Inside the bag were a jewelry box and a knife. According to Anton, he later confronted Rebecca, asking, "What the hell did you do?" He claimed Rebecca remained silent for a moment before replying, "You know why I did it." Anton also alleged that about 6 months before the murder, Rebecca had asked him to find someone to kill Dr. Stephen Schwartz. According to Anton, Rebecca's request that he return to the mansion to retrieve the bag was just one part of a plan to frame him. After she had staged the crime scene, Anton said He never contacted the police because he feared being deported from the United States. He also claimed that Rebecca owed him tens of thousands of dollars in unpaid wages and had threatened to cut off all his work if he ever revealed what had happened. Anton repeatedly insisted that he had no motive to kill Stephen. According to him, Dr. Stephen Schwartz paid him more than $100,000 a year and even helped support his family back in Albania. I cared deeply about Mr. Stephen. The biggest mistake of my life was not calling the police that day, Anton said. In 2021, after spending 6 years in jail awaiting trial, Anton accepted a plea deal with prosecutors and pleaded guilty as an accomplice. In September 2022, he was deported to Albania. However, Anton was not the only person who suspected Rebecca. Even Stephen's children from his previous marriage believed that their father's death was connected to her. His son, Carter Schwartz, alleged that Rebecca had been quietly transferring money from the couple's joint accounts into accounts that he had no access to. When Carter warned his father about the transfers, Stephen simply said he would take care of it. But, according to Carter, he never did. Afterward, Carter discovered that his father had changed his estate plan about a year before his death, leaving his entire fortune to Rebecca instead of his 3 children. As investigators looked into the possible motive, a secret that had been buried for decades suddenly came to light. One of Stephen's employees told police that Rebecca had been using information that could have destroyed his career to control and pressure him, according to Carter's attorney. That information may have been Stephen's criminal past, a secret he had concealed for nearly his entire life. Few people knew that before becoming a wealthy physician, Stephen had once been a convicted killer. In November 1961, at just 21 years old, Stephen shot and killed dentist Victor Cook in New Mexico during a robbery for $400. A friend later said that Stephen may have been deeply in gambling debt at the time. He was convicted of murder and served 9 years in prison before his sentence was reduced. After his release, Stephen moved to Italy to study medicine, eventually becoming a nephrologist and seemingly erasing his criminal past from his new life. Even his own children had no idea about this secret until after their father's death. Carter believed that if Rebecca had known about Stephen's past, she could have used it to manipulate and control him for years. Although Rebecca was never criminally charged in connection with her husband's death, she soon found herself facing a different legal battle. In 2016, Stephen's children filed a civil lawsuit alleging that she was responsible for their father's death. The family's attorneys argued that Rebecca had been embezzling money from Stephen's medical practice. When Stephen discovered the alleged theft and planned to file for divorce, they claimed she decided to kill him to keep his entire fortune. Nearly a decade later, in March 2025, the jury in the civil case found that Rebecca was responsible for planning or participating in Stephen's death. The court ordered her to pay nearly $200 million in damages to Stephen's family, according to the family's legal team. After Stephen's death, Rebecca transferred much of the estate into multiple limited liability companies, LLCs, allegedly making it more difficult to trace and recover the assets. So far, they have managed to freeze only about $6 million to $10 million. Rebecca, now 66 years old, has consistently maintained that she is innocent. After more than a decade investigating the case, Detective John Diebel still considers Rebecca the primary suspect. He once said, "It's the feeling of believing you know who the killer is, but not having enough evidence to bring that person to justice." To this day, the criminal investigation into Dr. Stephen Schwartz's death remains open, and what truly happened inside the luxury Florida mansion remains a mystery, one that has yet to receive a final answer.